Today, contraception just seems like the normal, responsible thing to do. But you might be just as surprised as I was to learn what some prominent thinkers of the early 20th century had to say about contraception. Let's take a look. Hey, if you're new to this channel, we're all about demonstrating how our earthly bodies reveal heavenly, divine mysteries. If you want help climbing out of the sexual chaos and confusion of our world today, you're going to want to subscribe to this channel. Make sure you click the notification bell, share these videos with others. All of that compels YouTube to help get this message out there. So we're continuing our series looking at my book, Good News About Sex and Marriage. We're in the chapter on contraception, and we're looking at the history here. A lot of people don't know that up until 1930, every Christian denomination recognized the immorality of contraception. That year, 1930, the Anglican Church was the first church to change its teaching and accept contraception in marriage. Much of the chaos, the sexual confusion that we are living through today was predicted then by wise men and women who understood the power of fertility to orient, or when we erase the fertility, to disorient our sexuality. Let's take a look at what some prominent thinkers in the early 20th century said about contraception. U.S. President Theodore Roosevelt, for example, condemned contraception as, quote, the one sin for which the penalty is national death, race death. A sin, he said, for which there is no atonement. What did Theodore Roosevelt see and understand about contraception that we're blind to today? Check this out from Sigmund Freud. He says, quote, the abandonment of the reproductive function is the common feature of all sexual perversions. We actually describe a sexual activity as perverse, says Sigmund Freud, if it has given up the aim of reproduction and pursues the attainment of pleasure as an aim independent of it. Wow, we all know Sigmund Freud was no friend of religion. He understood this, though. What did he see that we don't see today? Check this out from Gandhi. Gandhi said contraceptive methods are, quote, like putting a premium on vice. They make men and women reckless. He predicted, quote, that nature is relentless and will have full revenge for any such violation of her laws. Moral results, he said, can only be produced by moral restraints. He went on to say, if contraceptive methods become the order of the day, nothing but moral degradation can be the result. As it is, man has sufficiently degraded woman for his lust, says Gandhi, and contraception, no matter how well-meaning the advocates may be, will still further degrade her. Oh, man! Again, it makes you think, what did Gandhi see that we don't see today? Lord, open our eyes to what contraception has done. My brothers and sisters, it's simply impossible to understand the sexual and gender chaos and confusion we are immersed in today without recognizing the role that contraception has played. Check out what T.S. Eliot, the celebrated British poet and literary critic, said. This was right around 1930, after the Anglican Church had accepted contraception. T.S. Eliot says this, that by accepting contraception, quote, the world is trying the experiment of attempting to form a civilized but non-Christian mentality. The experiment will fail, he predicted, but we must be very patient in waiting its collapse. Meanwhile, redeeming the time so that the faith may be preserved alive through the dark ages before us, in order one day in the future, he says, to renew and rebuild civilization and save the world from suicide. Oh man, what did T.S. Eliot understand that we don't see today? Again, we have to say, Lord, open our eyes. When a committee of the Federal Council of Churches in America issued a report that suggested following the lead of the Anglican Church and accepting contraception, the Washington Post published a stinging editorial with the following prophetic statement. Quote, carried to its logical conclusions, the committee's report, if carried into effect, in other words, if the Council of Churches in America embraced contraception, this would sound the death knell of marriage as a holy institution by establishing degraded practices which would encourage indiscriminate immorality. Apparently, this committee's report suggested that if we accept contraception, there's no need to fear indiscriminate immorality because contraception, its use would be careful and restrained. Well, this editorial in the Washington Post said, the suggestion that the use of legalized contraceptives would be careful and restrained is preposterous. We have to keep this in mind. 90 years ago, when the Anglican Church accepted contraception, there were laws here in America put on the books by Protestant lawmakers that made contraception illegal, right? What did we understand about contraception in the past that we don't understand now? The church's teaching can be summarized very simply. Marriage, sex, and babies go together, and in that order, right? When we insert contraception into that order, marriage, sex, babies, we end up redefining all three. Babies become clumps of cells that we can do away with at will. Sex becomes the mere exchange of uncommitted pleasure between consenting adults, the gender difference being superfluous and malleable. And marriage will be redefined eventually as a kind of government stamp of approval on whatever your preferred method of genital pleasure might be. My brothers and sisters, this is not a prediction of some kind of apocalyptic future. This is the world we live in now. In forthcoming videos, I'll share more about the role contraception has played in the widespread sexual chaos and confusion in which we are immersed right now. Until then, my brothers and sisters, may our eyes continue to be opened to who we really are.